Thank you, Akila. This is an honor to be here with you today. We're very excited about what the Learning Partnership is doing. As Akila mentioned, I had the opportunity it was almost a month ago, I guess now, to present at Canada's Outstanding Principals Awards that the Learning Partnership gives. And I have to tell you, that was one of the more exciting opportunities because actually seeing how awesome the principals in our public education system are, highly motivational and says a lot about the future of our educational system. So a couple things as we go here. Excuse me. When Akila called me initially to say, oh, we want you to come and talk about public education and technology and where it's going, I said, what actual credentials do I have for that? Well, I guess I went to school. I did, in fact, most of the time, actually, if I'm honest about it. And I actually was educated both in Canada, grew up in Simcoe, so a southwestern Ontario boy, but also in the UK. So I had experience in a couple countries, so maybe that gives me a few credentials. And then I realized that Akila had really done her research, and maybe she snuck in some details from Ken Ferdine, the chair of the board, who's from Deloitte. But my mom was actually a principal of a high school, and so grew up in the public education system and taught for about 35 years. And I've got a couple of aunts and uncles that taught as well. So with that, that's the depth of my public education detailed expertise. But what she said she wanted me to talk about was innovation, disruption, what it means to our economy and ultimately our educational system. I said, well, you know what? I have this nice title called Chief Innovation Officer, so I guess I know something about that. And my job, by the way, is nice title, Chief Innovation Officer, but my job is to actually change our company. So 150-year-old professional services firm in Canada, 8,000 people. How do we innovate ourselves? And then how do we help our clients innovate? So we're doing a lot of work in the area of disruption and exponential technologies. So today what I'm going to talk about is some of the technologies that we see and the new business models that we see, and what do we think they mean to our educational system. So in the next 55 minutes or so, if I'm successful, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to actually scare you a little bit because we're at a juncture in our economy and in our country where if we don't do some dramatic things, we're going to be in a big problem. I'm going to inform you a little bit, so hopefully there's a few things you learn. It won't be too painful, so be prepared for that. And then with a little bit of luck, I'll get to some inspiration and some motivation. So inspire for some of the action that we're going to have for the rest of the day, and motivation to do something regardless of what area you come from, whether it's from the educational institutions, whether it's from corporations, or if you're a student, thinking about the things that you can do as you go forward. So that's the game plan. We're going to have a little bit of fun. I am told that I go fairly quickly and can talk quickly, so put your hand up if I need to slow down a little bit. But by design, we're going to get through a fair bit of material. Okay, that's the game plan. So we're going to show a quick little video. This is from Peter Diamandis, who helped found X Prize and Singularity University in the US.
What makes me so optimistic about the future is that we have more and more people coming online empowered to begin solving problems. 3 billion new minds who have never been heard from before are about to connect to the global mind. What will they want? What will they create? What will they invent? What will they solve? We are democratizing the ability to change the world, and individuals who see a problem can say, I can solve it. And what's making that possible is really the information technologies that we use and take for granted, all enabled by Moore's Law. Underlying all of this is information technology. The fact that our computers are twice as fast next year as they were the year before. And that enables artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic biology, digital medicine, computational powers that are enabling small teams of individuals to literally do what only governments and large corporations could do before. The technologies that we're providing to kids, to villages, to individuals around the planet, connecting them to the internet, allowing them to educate themselves, and this is where innovation begins. The biggest problems on the planet, water, food, energy, hunger, education, healthcare, these are problems that touch the lives of billions of individuals. Today, the heroes that can solve those problems, they're not governments, they're not large corporations, They're individuals, they're people who have a passion and a dream enabled by technology that's democratized the ability to change the world, who see that problem and say, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to create a technology, a product, a service that's going to slay that issue. And in fact, it's you, the people in this room, you're building the tools. The world's biggest challenges are being enabled because of the hard work that you're doing. So as you leave this room, as you go on to create the products and services that you're making, remember, what you're building today is going to touch the lives of billions of people. This is the future we're creating.
So I think that sets the tone for some of the opportunities that are in front of us. There is a test for the students in the room. Anybody find the spell check error in that presentation? Quick one. Was there one? Was there spell? There's one spelling mistake that I got to talk to Peter about. Artificial intelligence. He missed an I. He had an E in there. Anyway, so my mom was a bit of a stickler for grammar and spelling, so it's a curse. When I go through documents, I'll find the one spelling mistake in them. But so this is a really important issue for Canada. We've spent the last 3 years doing a lot of work on productivity and innovation. And if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, GDP per worker, the blue line is the US, the green line is Canada. That is not the trend you want. It looks a little bit like my investment portfolio too, but that is not the line you want. So we are continuing to lose our competitive advantage with with the actual US and other countries. And if you look at labor productivity, which is how we contribute to the economy, Rick talked about the productivity challenges a little bit. The US up at 1.9% average compound annual growth rate over that 8-year period, and we're down at 0.7. So every year the gap is getting wider. And look at all the countries that are above us. So we really need to change this. We are actually at the first time in our history of the country where the next generation of our country, our kids, will have a worse quality of life than we do if we don't change that curve. So that's a pretty daunting moment. So I have a 19-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and we were talking about this at home because I take all our research to them and test it, and after that they beat me up a little bit. But they said, Terry, Dad, how do we actually change this? Dad, you got a pretty important job. You work for a big company. Let's go change it. So this is something we fundamentally have to change. So some of the discussions on exponential technologies and exponential business models are really all about how do we bring that, how do we accelerate that growth here in Canada. There's some wonderful companies here in the room that are investing significantly in our country to do that, and folks like Cisco and Purelator and others. So I think this is something that I want to set the tone, because if we don't do anything, the outcome is very dramatic. When we think about the new technologies incoming, what Peter talked about a little bit about is about exponentials, and that's an important word of how fast some of these technologies are changing. In Australia, we bought an economic analysis company, and we said, well, let's look at how fast some of these things, whether it's the advancements in data, whether it's some of the new mobile technology, et cetera, how big are these things going to disrupt us? And we did some analysis across a variety of industry sectors and said, if the bigger capabilities come, is it going to cause a big bang? So fundamental change in an industry segment. And how quickly is it going to come? Is it going to be a short fuse or a long fuse? So we had a short fuse big bang discussion. I'll show just briefly some of the analysis, and you'll see what the industry segments say. We did take a look at Australia. The data shown here is for Australia. We looked at Canada in comparison, and it's almost identical given our economies and the distribution.
Disruption. It used to happen occasionally. Every so often, a social or economic upheaval would change the way people thought, connected, and did business. Then along came the internet, and bang, everything changed. Business feels different these days because technology has created a state of perpetual revolution. Digital disruption explodes the status quo, rewrites economics, scrambles supply chains, and blurs category boundaries. It also pushes a business into new dimensions while questioning its very survival. Every industry faces disruption, but not in the same way. As our Digital Disruption Index shows, change to your sector could be some way off, or it could be on a much shorter fuse. And the impact could be small, or a much bigger bang. Some businesses will emerge stronger, while others encounter heavier weather. The trick is in knowing how you'll be impacted and being thoughtful in your response.
So we looked at that and we said, you know, where are the short fuse big bang segments? You'll see education is in the long fuse big bang, and there's a fair bit of debate, but you can see it's pretty close to the edge, so it's almost in the short fuse big bang category. So fundamental changes that are coming, and how does it happen? There's this other little category called professional services that got our attention, because that's actually the business we're in. So we're in the business of providing advice and service to our clients. So we're in the short fuse big bang category. So we actually took that very seriously and said, how do we take this and think about what it means to our company? What do we need to do on a worldwide basis? So all of that to say that we need to be wary and be thinking about our actions and our responses. I'm going to go back for one sec because I skipped a slide. The research that we did in Canada on productivity, very complex topic, and there's a lot of research that's been done, the Jenkins report and other issues, but we said that, you know, we think there needs to be some work on a fundamental group of initiatives that need to be undertaken, and this is the 8 steps in the roadmap that we think is required to improve our productivity. I show it just to say that the number one first step in it is education. So K-12 education, and what the Learning Partnership and you all are here to try and do is really trying to tackle the education umbrella. Yes, we have to do things on innovation in our R&D tax credit system. We have to think about our immigration policies. There's a wide variety of areas that we need to work on, but education is first and foremost in the mix, and we can't actually achieve the change in the trajectory of that graph I showed without tackling the education capability. We also need to think about things like clustering strategies and how do we support our incubators and accelerators. We can talk a little bit more about that later. How we connect those with the actual university programs is a big deal. And investing in some of the technology and bring it through. So that's just some positioning. So let's now move a little bit to education for 30 seconds. So MOOCs, massive open online curriculums. People familiar with that? So interesting space, right? So the university programs are now saying, how do we put our curriculums online? When they first came out, Stanford put their artificial intelligence program online in a MOOC. Free, open capability, you could sign up for it. 180,000 people signed up for their AI program. 180,000, that was in 2011. This year, 2014, there will be 100% more students enrolled in MOOCs than there were last year. So how many of your businesses are growing at 100% per year? Not that many, right? I wish ours was. That would be awesome, right? We're growing, but not quite at that rate. So MOOCs are going to have an interesting implication on our educational program, and how do we bring the capabilities out as we go forward. So now let's talk a little bit. I'll shift into, so hopefully that was it for the fear and the scare you part of the discussion. We have an imperative. We're at a crossroads, and we need to change our trajectory. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of the education. Peter talked a bunch about exponential technologies. I'll touch on a few of those and give some real examples. I'm not going to go through all of them. When you look at Singularity and some of the materials they've got, there's at least 7 exponential technologies that are quite interesting. But I'm going to hit some that I think have fairly profound implications on our educational programs. So, networks and sensors. Google car. How many of you watched the video of the Google car? Self-driven car. A few folks in the audience. I see some heads nodding. This is very interesting. So the Google car, it's got sensors and capabilities, lots of machine-to-machine technology. The Internet of Everything is alive and well in this car, right? So it can drive without someone behind the wheel. If you get a chance to check out the video online on YouTube, there are many different ones. When I was down in Palo Alto at Singularity, we actually got to see the Google car. It drove past, and I will tell you, there is nothing quite like seeing a car that is pulling up and stopping in front of a person that's walking across a crosswalk that has no one in the driver's seat. So watching the video is one thing, but when you actually see it in front of you, it's very, very different. And it becomes much more real. It's driven over 1 million kilometers. It has only had one accident, and that was when they actually turned off the automated self-driving. So very interesting. Now, Terry, why are you telling us about this? This actually starts to have phenomenal implications if you think that autonomous cars are going to be part of our society. So, how many people think autonomous cars are going to be part of our society in the next 5 years? Let's go 5 years. Few hands, not that many actually. So Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, BMW, Audi have all said they will have an autonomous car at the latest by 2020. At the latest. The folks that we talk to that are in this industry would say probably closer to 2016. 2016, like that's 2 years, right? So interesting. So that's all about the car, guys, and we can worry about that. But now let's think about what does that mean. So I was sitting in Palo Alto thinking about this and looking at the car and going, wow, what would change in my behaviors and what are some of the implications? And we talked about that with the CEOs that were there. So I have a wonderful mother-in-law and father-in-law. They live in Ottawa. We go there, actually like my in-laws, so I'm very fortunate in that case. But we go there a couple times a year. Why do we go only 2 times a year? Because it's a fair drive, right? So it should be probably 5 hours, takes me maybe closer to 4.5. But I don't go that often because you get tired, it's a long drive. Now, if I can sit in the back of this car with my kids, catch up on Breaking Bad. Oh, I'm not supposed to admit that I watched that, but catch up on Breaking Bad because I didn't quite see all the 5th season, right? I might go 5, 6 times a year, okay? If I go 5, 6 times a year, what does that do to the traffic on the 401? Traffic's bad on the 401 to start with. What does that do to the traffic on the 401? Okay, so now do we have to regulate the traffic in different ways? The hypothesis is you can crunch more cars, crunch no pun intended, but put more cars into the system, your density can be higher. But the reality is that there would be more traffic. So now, do we have tolls on the 401? Do we start to get into sensors? Do we need to have sensors on the highway so we know, it's actually really good traffic at this time of night, and we start to test that? So it starts to have implications on how we build our infrastructure, has implications on insurance. What happens to the insurance companies that, when these cars can test each other and they don't have accidents? Volvo wants to do the autonomous car because their goal is to not have anyone killed in a Volvo car, period. By a car or in the car. So think about that as a audacious safety goal. So the networks and sensors and this kind of integrated unit and the kind of transformative capabilities it can have could impact government, could impact construction, could impact insurance, clearly could impact auto manufacturing. These are going to seem a lot more like a mobile living room than they are a car. So you start to think about the implications. Now, how are we educating people to think about those cross sections and the juxtaposition of all of that different technology, different implications in the integrated system? So I raise that just because it's a very interesting phenomena that may come through on where that goes. So Jeopardy! Any Jeopardy fans in the crowd? Ken Jennings. Does anybody know how many times did Ken Jennings win Jeopardy? 74. Prize to the man in the back. 74. It's the exact number, by the way. 74. But his last attempt to win was unfortunately not successful. He went up against Watson, IBM's super learning, deep machine learning computer. And he and one of the other Jeopardy, most prize winners, went up against Watson, and Watson blew them away 3 times to 4 times the amount of money that was earned and got the $1 million prize, and IBM donated it to some public sector opportunities. Now, the point of that being, artificial intelligence, natural machine learning is advancing very, very quickly. So, Deep Blue back in my day, it was like chess, right? You had to go up against Gary Kasparov. That took them a while. They finally beat him. And you go through the journey. They didn't think it could take unstructured data like Jeopardy, contextual data, and actually learn, but it clearly did, and it was dominant in the program. Now, IBM is taking that, and together with us and others, and looking at how do you apply that capability to other industries. So they're now saying, what if we took that and applied it to medicine? Okay, so clearly, you can go through, and Watson can go and find all the symptoms and do all the various research and knowing the bones, knowing the different kinds of things. But the question now is, could Watson get a medical degree? So I'll pause on that for just a moment. To get a medical degree, you have to do all the tests, right? You have to do the memorization. You have to be able to retrieve the information. So clearly, Watson's going to be very, very good at that stuff. But you have to do a practical exam. You have to actually do some operations and show that you know and understand that side of the the capability. They believe that Watson could probably get a medical degree between the combination of the advancements in AI and the advancements in robotics by summer of next year, 2015. There's an argument that says having humans put their hands inside your body to do surgery will feel as barbaric as doing open-heart or brain surgery without anesthesia. So start to think about that. And the reason I raise these is because it's not about one domain or interesting AI. Like, I'm a tech guy. I went to Waterloo and did an engineering degree and so on. But it's not about the individual capability of AI or the individual capability of robotics. It's about the combination of all of them and the convergence. So this is a very interesting one. There's another story I'll tell you later around the tricorder that gets me very excited as well. So fundamentally, how are we training our kids and how are we training our university programs to prepare people for this kind of world? And oh, by the way, what does that mean to jobs, right? So Watson can work a lot, doesn't ask for overtime, you know. So interesting implications. 3D printing. All right, 3D printing, hot buzzword. It's on every newspaper, Wired magazine, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, whatever. So how many of you have actually seen a 3D printer? Okay, majority of them. How many have one? Okay. I asked the question in the COPS program, the Canada's Outstanding Principles, and I was very excited. Of the 40, I guess it was 40 plus 25 or so, 65 principals that were in the room. 25 to 30% of them put their hand up and said they have a 3D printer in their school. I was actually quite astonished by that. I then asked the question, how many of them were provided by the government or part of your standardized kit that you're getting? Every hand went down. So they had somebody in their community, they themselves purchased it or whatever. Why is 3D printing going crazy? It's changing the manufacturing industry. It allows you to prototype things very rapidly and at a very low cost. So you can see this 3D printer is a maker bot. There's a whole maker society. We're actually creating a new breed of people that actually have creative talents and are doing design, and they're building it into the 3D printers. So it's very cool from that perspective. But 3D printing, this machine is less than $1,000, by the way. So you can make things, and these toys that were made using that particular capability. So it's interesting. So that's kind of fun. You prototype, and I get how the manufacturing guys would care about that, or the toy manufacturers and so on. But this guy actually cares pretty deeply about it. President Obama, in his 2013 State of the Nation address, he looked at 3D printing and said it could fundamentally change how America is productive. And he's creating 15 different centers across the country, 15 different centers across the country to focus on building that capability out and driving it out. A part of that is putting 3D printers out in the schools, ultimately. So think about what that means. As we looked at it, and we have a whole digital fabrication capability, as we looked at it, there start to be some other interesting things. So we're doing a lot of work with a company called 3D Systems, one of the world's largest 3D printing companies. This one is from a company called OsteoFab. So that is actually a 3D printed skull that can be put on. So if someone has had a car accident, had injury to their skull, had to have major surgery, etc., 3D printing with plastics, a device that could be put on their skull and actually become part of their body. Being used in operations today. Okay, so 3D printing went from that interesting kind of fun, funky thing to suddenly we're actually changing healthcare. You can start to 3D print organs. I haven't studied that one a lot. It's a little bit creepy to me, but that's where this is going. So how do we have the creativity being brought out in our educational system and the capability to design, to create, to innovate, and being applied across all of these different disciplines? So it's very interesting. And if you go beyond that, this whole thing, the F-35 fighter jet, it is certified to have 4,000 parts 3D printed in metal. So it's no longer about just the toys and the prototypes. It's actually about taking things all the way out to the aerospace world and the stringent defense criteria that are out there for this, right? So we thought that was quite interesting. When I was down in Palo Alto, I talked a little bit about 3D Systems, one of the world's largest 3D printing companies. They handed out these. So this is a cupcake with a nice little ornament on the top. It's the 3D Systems logo. That logo, that little cube on the top of the cupcake was 3D printed. So here's how fast this stuff is going. Hershey's, and I can say this because it was written up in the New York Times, Hershey's came down to our Innovation Partnership Program in Palo Alto in February of last year, so about a year ago now. They looked at all the stuff going on in 3D printing and said, "Oof, this is pretty interesting. We want to own the 3D printer in your kitchen." They believe that there will be your Cuisinart, your blender, and right beside it, your 3D printer, which makes my daughter very happy. She's a big chef and cook and loves dessert. So they want to own that. They had a little project going on in Hershey, Pennsylvania to try and work on that. When they saw what was going on down in Palo Alto, they said, let's stop the guys in Hershey. We're going to send them down. We're going to have them working here and try and see what we can do with food and where this goes. September, I went down, and this was 3D printed. My guess is this next round, the entire cupcake is going to be 3D printed. I took a picture of myself eating it because I thought this is actually one of those moments. It's like when the first iPod came out and you had all your albums on. I couldn't believe it. Like, it was a transformative moment. I think this is a transformative moment in this particular space, and you're going to see lots more of it. And this is just a little fun. But anyway, so that's a little bit on the technology. We've got a lot. We could talk a lot about the robotics side, digital medicine, all the things going there. But at the end of it, there are certain technologies and capabilities that are moving and changing at exponential rates, and we need to think about those in that way. And our brains actually don't process exponential very well. We know Moore's law, and we get that our computers are going to be faster and so on, but we don't process that very well. And so we need to think about those implications and how do we keep up with them. If we move beyond the technology, because I couldn't agree with Rick more. I mean, technology is important, but it is about the people. It's about the business models. It's about how we train people to learn. So let's talk a little bit about exponential tools. So here's a few of the exponential tools that we think are going to change how our organizations work, how they engage, and how they deliver things. So crowdsourcing, I'll talk a bit about that. Gamification, changing how we actually motivate and get people going. Crowdfunding, talk a little bit about what that means and how do we actually get the creativity and get funding to bring new companies alive. And then incentive competition. So I talked to you about the technologies. Now we're going to move into some of the new business models or capabilities. How many have heard of Kaggle? Kayla, you don't count because you were at the last session. Nobody's heard of Kaggle. OK, so this is a great example of crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing at its simplest level is take a problem, make sure you've got data and information, put it out into the crowd, see what answers come back. So outside your company. So Kaggle is driven toward algorithm development. Hot topic, big data, algorithms, all of, how do we drive that? Kaggle is driven toward that space. So they take a problem, they have a client that comes in, and they say, okay, we're going to take your problem, take your data, we'll anonymize it as appropriate, put it up into the crowd, and we'll get information back, and we'll see what happens. Okay? So not that hard kind of a thing to do. You've just extended your problem solvers. So here's an example that I think is very telling of some of the changes that are coming. So Allstate has over 100 PhD level data scientists. So they are serious about this stuff, right? And these guys do all the assessments of here's all the criteria of where you live, what your job is, what your driving record is, what is the likelihood of you having a car accident. And if we can predict that, then we can price some of the policies for you in a different way. So they've been working on this for many, many years. They thought they had the best algorithm in the world in their space. And they said, but you know what? We're not sure. We're not sure. So let's, Jeremy Howard from Kaggle came along and said, why don't we just test it? So they took their data. They had 3 years of data. So they took their historic data prior to that, which was the data that their algorithm developers would have used. And they said, let's anonymize it. We'll put it up in the crowd. And here's what happened. They had 202 people that said, you know what, I want to try this and I want to work on it. They morphed themselves into 107 different teams. And they came up with an algorithm that was 271% better than the 100 PhDs that have been working there. 271%, that is millions and millions of dollars of benefit to one of the largest P&C insurers in the business. Okay? And they spent $10,000. So think about what that means to algorithm development, to sourcing. And this is just one example. There are many different examples of how you can leverage the crowd. We've got 6 different categories. We're working with people on strategy. We're working with people on technology development. We're working with people on video production. So there's different companies that are figuring out how do you leverage the crowd. Kaggle has 120,000 data scientists that are out there helping them think about these problems and volunteering to go and solve them. Some win, some lose. Their highest, most successful algorithm developer is paid over $1 million a year at $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 pops. So they're very good. So here's the deal, though. When you go and we said, well, so what kind of people are actually solving these? Like, who are these? Who are these 120,000 data scientists yet? The majority of them, Jeremy would say, don't have a university degree. By the way, kids, this is not telling you that you should not have a university degree. Stay in school. But the majority of them don't have a university degree. That is not to say that they don't have university education. So, Terry, being fancy with your words, no. They're going to MOOCs, so they're going online. They're getting the best of the best from Carnegie Mellon or Stanford or U of T or Queens or Waterloo. They're getting the best of the best to educate them, but they're doing it in a different way. They actually don't care about the degree. They actually want the content. Okay? So that's the other thing Jeremy would say is that group, they generally, when they solve the problem, the winners of each of these contests that they do, and they do them everything from predictive pricing to fraud analytics to across the board, they generally don't come from the industry that the problem is in. So so I ask you that only on what is the nature of work and where do we go with that, and are people going to be independent contractors, or are they going to work for large companies like Scotia or Deloitte or Cisco? Don't know, right? I think it's going to be a combination. But we need to be thinking about that, and our companies need to be leveraging these kind of capabilities. So gamification. So sick kids, I think this is just an awesome example of gamification to solve problems. How do we take some design and make things into games? So cancer treatment award at sick kids, to understand all the treatments and how effective they are, you have to have the kids logging everything that they do. Right? So they have to actually say, okay, I took my pill at 8 o'clock, I had the treatment, I went walking, I felt horrible when I did this, I felt good when I did that. I don't know about you guys, but like my kids would never keep the journal, even when it's something as serious as cancer treatment. So what they did is they said, how do we actually make this fun for them? So they created something called Pain Squad, and it's really a mobile game, so the kids love mobile. And based on the text charges that I get on my daughter's phone, they really love mobile. So the goal here is to make it into a game. I earn points every day by entering all my information. They went and got the guys from Rookie Blue, so there's some video clips. You're fighting a battle and you're winning the battle. It's the battle, subtly it's the battle against cancer, but you're providing information. So they've changed the game. Massive uptake in the actual documenting of what's going on in the day, how they're feeling, how they're going. And so with a modest investment, they've got a fundamentally different outcome. And there's lots and lots of different things that we think can be done around that area. Okay, crowdfunding. So one of the things that we need to do, we need to get great products out. We need to get new solutions out in the market. Crowdfunding, how many know what that watch is? Anybody? David? Yeah, it's a Pebble watch. So started with some guys that did a watch to connect to the BlackBerry. They then said, maybe we need, our next rev should be on the Apple or on Android. So the watch, simple, $100 to $150 watch, connects with your smartphone. You can change the, even though they have different colors, that's actually the same watch, but has a different face. So it's electronic paper, so it can actually change the face, deciding which face do you want to have today. Do you want funky? Do you want the normal analog, classic, old, retro, whatever? So what these guys did is said, we want to go and build this watch, so we want to go raise $100,000. We want to put it out on Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a site where you can do crowdfunding. You put your product up, you put a video, and people can pre-buy. So instead of the classic venture capital funding model of, I want money from you, I'm clever about what I do, I give you a good pitch, and you say, okay, I'm going to give you some money, but I'm going to take a whole bunch of your equity, right? Not unlike Dragon's Den, right? Everybody's seen Dragon's Den, right? So this model is different, because what they do in this model is they pre-buy products. So they wanted to raise $100,000. Let's call it $100 a watch, so 1,000 watches they want to sell. 30 days, they raised $10.3 million. So product test, fundamentally, so it's leveraging the crowd, it's getting them money, they can now go build it. It was the most successful crowdfunding example ever. This is teaching people around a different model of how to actually get money in, support their idea. Now, there's lots of unsuccessful Kickstarter stories as well, and there's other sites like Indiegogo and so on. But this is going to change how we raise money, how we fund, and by the way, how we fund private, not-for-profits as well. We're doing a little crowdfunding campaign for CNIB that I'm working with, and it's had phenomenal success in terms of how we drive the campaign out and leverage the crowd. So all that just saying there's different models as we go through this. Another Canadian company that has gone out to the crowd, they raised over $100,000 in just a few days for their energy aware. So this is how do I actually monitor temperature in my house, adjust it and adapt it and understand all of the different energy consumption that I have. So it's applying in the US as well as here. This one I think is very cool. So this is incentive competitions. So X Prize, Peter Diamandis founded X Prize. The first X Prize that they did was the contest for a commercial enterprise, so non-government funded space exploration. So how could you create a rocket that goes up into space, 100 kilometers, comes back down, 3 people on it, twice in the same week, doesn't kill anybody. That was one of the criteria. You couldn't kill anybody. Okay? So they put $10 million prize up, and there was over $420 million of people that were competing and driving it. This one, I think, is one of the more exciting ones. So Peter talked about impacting 1 billion people. This is called the tricorder exercise. So any Star Trek fans? You can admit it. Come on. Okay, there's got to be some women here. It's all guys. All the guys, I don't know. Too geeky. Anyway, there's one. Okay, good. We got one in the back. So admitted Star Trek fan. So Peter and the X Prize folks said, what could we do to solve attack 1 billion people in healthcare? So they said tricorder is pretty cool, right? Scan you up and down, sort out all your illnesses, and away you go. So the tricorder prize, $10 million again, sponsored by Qualcomm, and the contest is to create a device that's $1,000, under $1,000, handheld, and can do 85% of what a doctor can do. Okay, so let's just think about that. $1,000, handheld, 85% of what a doctor can do. They believe it's been running for a while. There's 34 teams this month. They're going to reduce down. There's 3 or 4 teams that are from Canada, so fingers crossed we'll have a Canadian winner. But think about what that could do for our healthcare sector. We're not going to wipe out doctors, but can we get more efficient healthcare out to places where we can't reach it? They believe this will be solved by the summer of 2015. Ooh, right? Like, interesting, right? And so we're leveraging machine-to-machine technology. This is leveraging machine-to-machine technology. It's going to be leveraging AI in the back end, so it'll do diagnosis. There's already people using precursors to this that don't quite meet all the criteria that are doing diagnosis for oncology centers around the world. So anyway, just a very interesting thing. So we kind of talked now about, we spanned through the technologies. I talked a little bit about the business models and some of the things that are changing. So one of the things that we're quite keen on is design thinking. So how many have studied or looked at design thinking? This is a big deal. If you are in the business of creating new products and new services, design thinking fundamentally can change the game. Leveraging those technologies, and we'll talk about what that means. So, how we traditionally create our products. Feasibility and viability. So feasibility, can I do it? Get all the engineers, get all the architects, get them all together and figure out, is it feasible, right? I'm an engineer by trade, so get very excited about that. Viability, then we got to say, okay, can we make money at it? Bring in the finance folks, bring in our CFO, bring in the controller, say, okay, we can do it technically, and we can do it for money. That is how we have designed products forever. What we have missed is desirability. And so this is where we believe you fundamentally have to start. There's a lot of research that's been done at the whole focus on design thinking has been around for over 30 years, but it's now getting traction. When you use devices that are just so intuitive and easy, and you say, it's unbelievable, how did they make this that easy? Apple is pervasive at this. It's because they applied design thinking. They looked at the problems that they were going to solve. They looked at if people actually wanted it, and then they created them. So there's lots and lots of examples. This is an entire talk in and of itself, but it's pretty interesting stuff. So think about that, and how are we training people on design thinking? Some of the questions that we start to think about with this what are the, the implications of some of those exponentials? Are we training people sufficiently in creativity and 3D printing? Are we training people in the technologies that are behind robotics? There was some of the assessments this morning on math, and our math scores are going down. If we're going to live in a world of algorithms and analytics, and that's going to be very important, math skills are essential, right? So how do we make sure that we're taking advantage of that? What do we need to change in our educational system? And how do we actually keep up with the pace of this, right? So those are a few of the ones. I came across, as I was thinking about what to show you today, I came across a brief video, and it's from a company in the US called Amplify. This is not a product pitch. We are not working with this company, but I think it's attacking the exact problem that this discussion is here to look at. So this is a little bit about what Amplify is all about.
Most U.S. 8th graders, 2/3 in fact, aren't rated proficient in reading or math.
American students are behind the rest of the world. They rank 23rd in science and 32nd in math.
A quarter of U.S. high schoolers don't graduate, which means the U.S. ranks 21st in the world of graduation.
Real education spending per student has more than doubled over the last 30 years, while results have remained flat.
It's a tragedy when a child comes into school full of curiosity about the world and gets somehow lost in the system.
Education now is the great civil right. If we want to create a society based on equality of opportunity, then we need to really dramatically change how we educate young people so that they all have a chance to be successful.
Right now, we have a model with one teacher, 25 or 30 kids, and a textbook. We've been locked in to this model for over 150 years now.
If a kid lives in a world where everything around them is about their ability to communicate with one another, and teaching and learning doesn't have those same dynamics, of course that system's going to fail.
Kids today are, of course, using all sorts of different devices and media to interact, and then when they show up at school, they have to turn them off. We're interested in what happens when they don't turn them off.
The thing that makes this country economically so powerful is our commitment to innovation. The Googles and the Apples and the Facebooks and the Twitters, and we can bring that same dynamic, innovative spirit to education.
There are moments of real excellence in every classroom and in every school, but sometimes they're moments instead of a sustained signal of powerful learning. And I think what Amplify is about is capturing those moments, figuring out how to spread them to other teachers, to other classrooms, and figuring out how to sustain them.
In here, there's maybe a category which is focused on kind of adventure and quest.
Our role on the Amplify project is to look at the needs and motivations and behaviors around primarily middle school students, but also parents and teachers.
We spend a lot of time finding the balance of motivation whilst not getting in the way of the learning. There's still a lot to learn about it, but the only way to do that is to constantly experiment and to put it in front of kids.
So how many of you play some sort of computer game in some of your classes? Today, we're going to look at a couple of things on a tablet, and I'm going to get some feedback so that we can bring it back into the designs as we're creating a new curriculum for next year.
So we're focused on 3 specific areas. One, building a curriculum that is unlike anything that's gone before. Second is distribution. What are the platforms and devices that are going to be used in schools in the future? And the third is the data and analytics. So a teacher can see the gap between where each of her different students are and where they need to be. And if learning is focused on that gap, that's when it's most effective.
It's not that teachers should have to learn more about technology. It's that technology needs to learn more about teachers.
The real quality comes with the teacher guiding you through technology.
If we create that platform that really has the rigorous data and analytics capabilities, and you combine that with new delivery systems, it's a whole new solution that this sector's never seen.
We call it Amplify for a reason. So at every level of the educational enterprise, We want to amplify, to empower teachers, to improve instruction, to get parents more involved in their kids' education. I see a world in which each kid is essentially getting his or her own instruction at her own pace and tailored to that child's needs.
We expect it to be a long road. This is not an easy problem to solve.
Well, Amplify has the commitment, the vision, and the resources. We cannot do this alone.
We feel like education is a constant conversation about how we could do better.
So if you're a teacher or an administrator, come and share your knowledge with us.
We want people to push back. We want to hear what works, what doesn't work, because we can't get better if we're not hearing the straight truth about it.
And I'm hoping our website plays part of the role in making this discussion much more dramatic and let a little controversy in. That's okay too, because that's the way you stimulate and that's the way you grow. That's what innovation is all about, and that's what's been sorely missing in K-12 education.